If it's a
And
guru, a lot of times they'll use their supposed mystical powers or
powers.
whatever to see something in you that's very special. They
Yes.
will recognize that you have some kind of talent or ability, or you're just you were someone in a past life that was very important or connected to them in some way, and
Yes.
that's a red flag.
Anytime somebody's telling you something about you, even if it's great, that you don't know about you, red
Red
flag.
flag.
That's why I wore the shirt today.
I was gonna
Okay?
say
I'm
you
like,
wore the red flag shirt.
Welcome to the Dirty Mind Podcast.
That's dirty. That's dirty.
I have three tangents that I want to talk about today.
Tangent number 1.
Tangent time. Okay, this is what I want to say first. We'd had previous conversations about factors that can, dirty up your mind, right? We talked about mental health, we talked about mental illness, we talked about anxiety, depression, we talked about trauma and abuse. Then we talked about groups and those types and what they look like. Actually, the second one was relationships, right? And then and a lot about that. And then we talked about groups. But I wanted to talk to you and bring up us in general and just little ways and self-criticism and ways that we bring up uh, how we can dirty up our mind ourselves. So it's just a little thing that popped in my mind is that last week, my husband went and talked to a therapist and he was having a conversation and it was a new person. And she said to him, what do you want to get out of it? And he had so many things that he wanted to change. And he had all this, like, I do this and I procrastinate and whatever it is. And then she said, and tell me, what are your strengths? And he said he had such a hard time because he doesn't think about that. And then that sent me on a tailspin of thinking, because this is a topic that I bring up a lot that I think about a lot myself, that I talk about with clients a lot, or anybody who will listen, is just this phenomenon that our mind will start to, we can dirty up our minds over time, and the ways that it starts to, out of safety, or you'll have something to say about this, but questions that I ask are, why is it that we can always think of the what if or the worst case scenarios, or what if this happens, or what if I lose the job, or but we can't think of, or we don't often ask ourselves, what if everything worked out amazing and I got promoted and I, had a sound mind and I felt in control and I have confidence. Why is it that we are, you know, in this place where we are so conditioned to think so often about the negative and prepare for disaster or tragedy or something? And I just thought that that was interesting that he said that, because I know so many people will relate. Like our previous conversation, we talked about everyone's been in some kind of mental health situation where something's occurred. We had a trauma. We joined this group. We were in this unhealthy relationship, and everyone can relate to that. But every single person really can also relate to the ways that we do this with ourselves, so that when it shows up in a relationship or it shows up in something else, it's kind of just already, it's picked apart a little bit more, or it's your foundation is ripped out a little bit more. But I just found that interesting, and I'd love to hear what you have to think about. Why do you think that we do those things where we can tell you all the things that are wrong with us? We don't often have a lot of answers on what we're really proud of or things that we've achieved. And we all have been through a lot, and we have had, difficult situations that we've overcome. Why can't we see how we overcome? Why can't we see how we are raising people, or how we, or how we persevere or have been hurt and like dusted off and walked on and continued? And I found that to be interesting, because his situation, because I really just brings me back to the same question all the time, which is, that question of why people are doing what if thing, or what if this bad thing happens? And what if this bad thing happens? And we aren't asking ourselves, what if the best case scenario happens? Like, do you
Mhm.
think that's a protection thing that we are doing? Is that the same thing that we
Mm.
discussed before about, is that a protection thing to,
Maybe it's actually like more comfortable to be, or you like want to be prepared for bad things, but you don't want to be disappointed when the good thing doesn't happen or something. I
yeah,
have
like an
been,
expectation?
yeah, I've been thinking about
Mhm.
that a lot. I don't know if we come in different, but my 7-year-old has been already saying negative things. I'm not very smart when you forget something. Um,
Yeah.
and I'm like, well, you're not smart. You made a mistake, or you forgot, or we spent like 20 minutes looking for something outside in the sand that was sitting on the counter.
I
Like he
love
thought
it.
he
Yes.
thought he had dropped it in the sand. So he's like, oh, I'm not very smart. And I think it's like it's problematic when we make it a problem in us, not in our behavior, because it's like we all make mistakes, but doesn't mean
We're
we're
supposed
bad.
to. That's what we're
Yeah.
supposed to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting with children, and I am constantly having conversations with myself on what would be the best way to not dirty their mind, right? And one of the best people, I may have said this to you before, but one of the best lessons or things that I've ever heard was, did you ever hear that masterclass thing that a lot of people who are very successful would do this masterclass?
Mhm.
It's this thing that's like that $100 a year or whatever. I had a masterclass subscription for a little while, and the only one that stood out to me, and I never forget it, was Sarah Blakely, who was the woman who
Spanx.
created Spanx,
Yeah.
right? So $1 billion, it was the $1 billion idea, and it just went crazy. And she talked a lot about, what she came up with and who she is, and how, her networking group, and they were all male, and everybody was always, laughing that she was, the little meek one or whatever. And then she came up with this, and then they're all asking her for advice. But what she said was, which is amazing, and it so contributed to her being who she is that every day her dad would ask at the dinner table, "What did you fail at today?" As an expectation. And she said he would actually get upset if we didn't have something. So I would always be thinking in my brain of reiterating over and over, is like, what did I fail at today? What did I fail at today? And he made it so enticing for him. He needs to hear it. Everybody's supposed to fail every day. And then she
Wow.
comes up with a $1 billion idea because she was so okay to fail a whole bunch of times before that.
Wow, I love
So
that.
it's so interesting, like, when your kid says, and my daughter does this too, is like, oh my gosh, that was so stupid. When she does something, I get so frustrated because I'm like, you are supposed to make mistakes.
Yeah.
We are human beings, and we are supposed to make mistakes. So getting that in our brains and trying to, as parents, as people, as adults, it's just interesting to me, the criticism and the way that we have like this hypersensitive radar to pay attention to the negative. Or when we go and have conversations with people, I bet so many people can relate to this. And I don't do this as much, but I really really try consciously to not do this. But being in, almost bonding with somebody or relating to somebody by being like, oh, how hard everything is, or someone's like, how are you? Oh,
Venting.
it's like, yeah, it's just an interesting phenomenon. Like, I would do it because two reasons. Number one, guess maybe everything was crazy in that moment. So I would like be, a little nuts. Like maybe this is pre, ADHD diagnosis, or, anxiety, depression diagnosis. So maybe I really was actually a shit show, and like was being saying it. And the other thing I noticed about when I would do that is, if things were actually going really well for me and I was feeling empathetic towards the person or compassionate towards the person because I don't think that things were going so well, or that things were a little bit harder, it's like
Mhm.
I would go down to that level to show, like, see, like, yeah, we're all like in this. I don't
Mhm.
know. I find it interesting. I could talk about that a lot, and I
Mhm.
think a lot of people can relate, but it is something to think about, and, it's
One
something to
thing that
explore a little bit later.
one thing that I heard Brene Brown say about
Yeah.
this was that she's like, yeah, I tell my kids there's no name calling in the house. Like they're not, that's the one hard rule. Like you can't call each other names. And she says, and that's fine. But that means you can't call yourself a name either. And and so she says, so with the failing
And then
thing,
you
she's like,
realize all the names that you've been saying, right?
yeah,
Like,
yeah. And how you sign up your kid for like dance class or whatever, they don't want to go because they're not already really good at dance. And she's like, you always encourage them to go and learn and try and just be, it's fine, just have fun. But she said, but she's like, but I don't do that. Like I don't sign up for things that I'm not good at. And I was like, oh. So I love that, like
know.
pushing yourself to fail and encouraging the failure is like, we have to do that too. We can't just tell our kids
Yes.
to.
We can't just tell our kids to. So it's so interesting when I'm saying, and I'm trying to think about this a lot when I'm saying to them, you're just human, you're human. Congratulations. You're supposed to make mistakes every day. And the point is, are you going to learn from that and change that? Is that what's going to, are you going to grow from that and like figure out what happened here and then we can move on and do something different next time? Or are you going to keep it the same? But then turn it right back around to this perfectionist, and how I will stop things or give up or do all the things that we don't want them to do. Don't give up, make mistakes. And then, yes, we have to see what we are modeling or what we are even thinking or, I mean, it's like they just have really good radar and they learn it, they figure it out. And they're in real life. So they see teachers doing it, they see other friends doing it, they see friends doing it to them or saying that, or, it's interesting. Or so anyway, that was something I wanted to point out that I did not cover singularly,
Yeah.
looking at the ways that we dirty up our mind, the ways that we live in a dirty mind, the ways that we focus on the dirty more than we focus on all of this clean clarity and amazing qualities that we have to be even raising kids, to even being standing up every day for some of the things that we've all gone through. It is a miracle that we keep going. And I think that it's time that we live where we're acknowledging that.
Yeah.
We should do it. I mean, because it should be acknowledged. That's the truth. Okay. Second thing I wanted to say, I think I have like 4 things, but
Okay.
the second thing I wanted to say was, and I'm just going out of order. I wanted to ask you, we talked a lot about groups yesterday, and we talked about, or previously, we have talked a lot about high control groups and cults. And I don't think that we gave the definition of a cult, or I don't know if we discussed that a lot of the groups that we are in actually tell us and condition us to that it's going to come, that people are going to consider it a cult. And they will say things like, they'll get you ready for what to say so that, they can kind of condition you to understand that it's not a cult and here's why. And they say often, a lot of these groups, that there is no definition of a cult, and that is untrue. There is a definition of a cult, and cults follow a certain structure. We can do a whole episode on that at some point, but I want people to understand that I know that that word is very triggering for people, and that they will think, no, it couldn't be. And it has to be something like you said, the white robes. And, we have these ideas, which yes, they were cults too, and they are cults, but there are characteristics of cults that maybe some people don't even get really hurt, but you are being taken advantage of in some way. And that there is an indoctrination of getting everybody to think in the same way and to be on that same page, and that you are not allowed to have a different perspective than that. Even if I'm putting that in quotes from our group, that, the truth is, everything, but you're not allowed to think about it or feel about it, right? Or have any kind of emotion. So you're supposed to know, but we talked about not being able to have an ability then to know, because you don't have the tools, right? You're not using anything in your mind, your body, to understand. And then you are conditioned to, here's what you should know. There is no definition. Here's why we're not. I wanted to just make that clear and have you talk a little bit more about that.
Well, and the main thing is you're being deceived. So in a healthy group, it's very upfront, transparent. Here's what we're doing here. Here's why we're doing it. Here's where your money goes. Here's how long you will be in. Here's how you leave if you want. Like it's all
Right.
transparent. And in
Here's the
cultic
success
group,
stories of people
the-
here's the success stories of people who have left and graduated from here,
Mm,
and they don't stay here forever, right?
yeah. Well, and like in an MLM they are cults too. And they basically hide the fact that 99% of people are going to lose money and not make any
Yes.
money.
Yes.
99%. And that's been
Yes.
documented across like all these MLMs. And
Yes.
yet they will preach the success stories of the 1% that do.
Right.
Same
But
thing in
even when they talk about the success stories, they're still there. It's a group that would say, this is a program you go through, and then they've graduated from this, and then look at them now off in the world.
yeah.
I would not consider that a cult,
Yeah.
right?
That's a
That would
great
be
point.
that would be a self-improvement group that helps you to get through, and then you move on. You don't
Yeah.
join DOS, or you don't, Pasco and do not collect 200.
Yeah,
It's
that's really true. They never use a success story of someone who has left. It's always someone who's still in, and they're not talking about all the other factors. So how much does it cost them to stay in that? Like all of these you have to pay to play. So it's like you might
right.
be making this much money, but how much is it costing you? There was a lady I talked to who was in the group we were in for even much longer than I was, and she had just done her books from, what was it, like 19 years or something. And she had lost, not cost her, but lost like net negative almost $400,000. Like
My
that's
gosh.
not a viable business model. And it's like she didn't like not give it a shot, she worked really hard for a really long
Yes.
time.
I would
So
assume if you were investing that kind of money that you would put it, to good use and have to, be working it.
yeah, so the thing with the deception is they hide the truth, they distort the facts, they tell partial truths, they outright lie, they coerce you into things, and they will do things like they'll incentivize people to tell their success stories in exchange for like getting a cut of the class they're promoting or things like that. So they're
Right.
incentivizing, you're endorsing something because you're being incentivized. And a lot of times
Right.
when you are like your livelihood is wrapped up in this thing, or your relationship is wrapped up in this thing, or whatever, you can't see it clearly, and you will actually be motivated to not see all the stuff you don't want to see because you want to stay in. And so
Right.
you're almost back to your first point, deceiving yourself. And I did that to myself in order to stay in, because I just put blinders on. Like the day one, they're like, we're not a cult. Here's why. And the evidence is stupid. Like there's not, it's like, if you look past page 2,
Well,
it's
they
like,
make a joke about it, and then it's so funny. You feel like you're part of this group that, oh my gosh, they don't get it. They're just extremely clever about doing that wording correctly. And then there's a lot of groups that are doing, if it's a self-improvement, most of the time, the self-improvement groups that are the most dangerous, they will do, I know Nexium did this. I know that there are some other groups that do this as well, where they will give you, keep you there for about 5 days or something, which is, there is this studies of the amount of hours or days that you're absorbed into something, and then all of a sudden it clicks. So a lot of times people will go to these groups, and the first couple of days they're like, this is ridiculous. I felt the same thing when I was reading through my friend who introduced me. It was so stupid. I mean, it was just so dumb. And then when you start to immerse yourself and you go to something that's a little bit longer, you start to really, that's where the indoctrination hits. It's like a hypnotic kind of process where they know that it takes that much time. And then when you're there for that, what they do is introduce the next thing that you're choosing to go, but basically you have to be there. And they will give you, if you sign up right now, and they'll find a way to do it. They'll figure out, help you with the credit card or help you with the payments or whatever it is. They will give you 10% off, or they'll give you this thing, and you can't miss out. It's always like this thing that you can't miss out, because you won't be as advanced as everybody else. You won't be as evolved as everyone else. And so, It's just a choice if you don't want to do it, but there's a lot of judgment in there if you don't do it. So, and it's interesting. There's different ways for different groups. There, religious cults, they've got their process. They self-improvement groups, MLMs. So what I'm saying is there are definitions of cults. You don't have to be scared that it's this horrible thing and that it's this, the name itself is very scary for people to hear. But the truth is that if you do understand the definition, then you really will be able to spot it. You'll be able to spot it in yoga groups where maybe there's a type of yoga that's fantastic and it really works for your body and you really like it. But I can promise you, if you go and find that group that is hanging around with the guru and they all live on that commune together, there is some shady shit going on every time.
100%.
So it's about how absorbed you are, or it's about how, up in the inner circle you are, right? Which you know a lot about. And it depends on what group it is, but they all do have the same tactics and they do use a lot of the same playbook. And so I just don't want to frighten people by that word, but that really is something that needs to be discussed a lot because there are so many groups out there that are mainstream and that are cults, and that we need to be aware of that so you can keep your mind clean and that you can be, keep your mind strong and sound and be able to understand those signs before you go down that rabbit hole of investing money or feeling like you're going to find some part of yourself that's right on the periphery. And however many years later, and
Yeah.
a lot less money, right?
Well, one way to protect yourself against that, what you just said, is just to take some extra time in making the decision,
Right.
because as you said, they put a lot of pressure, and whether it's financial discounts or just peer pressure, and everyone's so excited and they want you to be there and you feel like you're part of something. If you just take space and take
Mhm.
time and take the pressure off, if you still want to go, a couple weeks later after leaving the group, then fine. But typically, once you're out of that sort of, because it's multi-layered, multifaceted, but sometimes, like for us, we meet cool people there. Like I met you, and it's like I want to see you again the next weekend or whatever. I
Right.
want to travel to that next cool city, and it doesn't matter that I have to put it on my credit card or I have to borrow
Right.
against my rent payment or
Yeah,
whatever.
because
And
it's all going to come back and it's all, yes, exactly.
so just
Yeah.
taking that, because there's always going to be another chance. Like they make it out like it's the one and only time. It's not.
Yes. It's
There will be
not.
there will be another one.
It's not. And it's not the only thing. I did want to discuss few more red flags because we did touch on
Yeah.
red flags. And I really wanted to can we go through those a little bit? Can we go through
Let's
some of
do it.
them?
Red
Okay.
flags.
So previously we talked about some red flags in our previous conversation. And I believe that we spoke a lot about love bombing, right? We had a lot of conversation about what love bombing is and then what happens after that, right? So if you feel all of a sudden that you don't know somebody super well, or you just got into a relationship and it's so magic, it's like you met the one and they are just, it's, oh my gosh, it's too good to be true. It's too good to be true. If someone doesn't know you, they shouldn't be telling you that they just had a dream about you, or they know that you are the person they're going to spend their life with, or okay, those are starting to see those are starting to see the beginning signs of like a love bombing. They're testing out to see how you'll respond to that so that that they can come in even harder. And like we spoke about previously, we talked about bad vegan, right? Sarma, I can't pronounce her last name, but this was exactly, a classic case of being love bombed, right? So just use your critical thinking skills. Does somebody know you enough to be able to say all these things?
What if it's a
And
guru? A lot of times they'll use their supposed mystical powers or
powers.
whatever to see something in you that's very special. They
Yes.
will recognize that you have some kind of talent or ability, or you're just you were someone in a past life that was very important or connected to them in some way, and
Yes.
that's a red flag.
Anytime, we also spoke about this previously, anytime somebody's telling you something about you, even if it's great, that you don't know about you, red
Red
flag.
flag.
That's why I wore the shirt today.
I was going to
Okay?
say,
I'm
you
like,
wore the red flag shirt.
I'm not joking around no more. I did my nails red. I'm going for it. I want everyone to know the red
You-
flags.
You're the
It's not that,
embodiment.
thing is, it's not that you're not great. It's
Yeah.
not that you're not great. It's that they most likely picked up something that you might have felt insecure about, and listen, you might be in relationships and you might meet someone who just notices something really lovely about you and they give you that compliment, or they do feel really connected with you. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is somebody bringing up something in you that is ultra special, very different, but they don't know you,
Yeah.
right? And you don't know them enough for them to have that kind of information, whether it's a group leader, whether it's a relationship, whether it's, a friend, because that can happen as well. There are
I
just, those
think,
things are to consider.
again, your buffer against this is time. Someone
Yes.
you
Space.
should
Yeah.
you should build trust slowly over time. Even if it's a therapist, it's like therapeutic relationships can have can be toxic or cultic as well. Your therapist or new partner or whatever should not instantly have all your trust. Like, you should be building
Right.
trust with a person slowly over
Right.
time.
Exactly. So consider when somebody is seeing something in you, I'm putting that in quotes, that is something to take the space from and really consider that kind of talk. Previously, I brought up the leader knowing more about you than you do, right? It's the same kind of thing with the love bombing. It's the same kind of thing, the leader telling you of who you were in a past life. You are clear in your head and your heart and your,
Crotch.
crotch. um, you are, and then when you leave, you're not those things
Dirty.
anymore.
Dirty.
Oops.
And you did talk about fear. So fear indoctrination is one of the main tactics that they use to keep you in. And the way they indoctrinate fear will vary. And it may not be outright told to you, or it might be, but it is something that you can also pick up subtly as they talk about people who have left. And note, so here's another safety mechanism for you if you're in a group. How do they treat their ex members? How are they talking about people that have left? Is it favorable, or are they scaring you by telling you stories about how their life fell apart when they left, or something terrible happened to their family, or they got sick and died, or they got in an accident? Or these are all ways that they indoctrinate you with fear that if you leave, something bad will happen.
Yes. And that also goes back to, I mean, we can talk about that with every single group and all the examples, but when I was also just talking about, because I have a lot of research and education on those who have left polygamous cults and fundamentalist groups, and they are so isolated and grown up in that group, right? So they are off into a little pocket of the earth and a little tiny space where this is where everybody is. And it is taught to you that everybody on the outside is damned all the time. They are run by the devil. You're going to get, attacked. You're going to be, hurt the second that you walk out. So a lot of them who have left have said things like, I had to leave because it was so much hell inside. I actually was okay to take the hell outside. I would rather have taken the hell outside. And then when they get out, they cannot believe the kindness and the grace of the strangers who want to help them and take them in. This is an extreme example, and I'm giving you extreme example so that people can put that in a smaller version of what they hear, right?
Well,
If you're in a relationship with somebody saying, you're never going to find anybody like me. No one's ever going to put up with that stuff that you do. No one's ever you are so lucky to be with me. People believe that kind of thing, right? When we're groomed enough to believe that and conditioned enough to believe that, that is something that in a one-man cult, right? In a relationship that is dysfunctional, you will hear that. You can't go out there because there's nobody else out there that'll have you.
Yeah. And I definitely found that exact what you said when I left. We were always told that the kindest, most amazing people were inside the group. And so we wouldn't really associate for too long with people outside, not because we weren't allowed to, but just why would you? And like
Right.
best people are on the inside. You all have this
Right.
thing in common and you're all, absorbed by this doctrine. So you're speaking the same language, you're on the same mission. So you just wouldn't have friendships outside. And when I left, I was like, oh my gosh, like true people that are actually kind, where it's not transactional kindness, where if you do this for me, I'll do this for you, which is the type of kindness that I was experiencing inside the group for the most part.
Yeah.
Was actually when I left, I was like, wow, there are actually kind people out here in the real world.
Yes.
Mm.
And it feels so good, doesn't it, to just be simple and human and to be able to talk about something either light or deep or whatever with people where it's not this constant figuring out if they are this type of person or this type. It's like the nervous system when you leave those kinds of relationships or those kinds of groups is unbelievable how your body can relax because you're not playing that game of needing to be right, needing to be have the right answer, needing to be the most important one. Everybody's pushing and shoving each other out of the way to, to please the head. It's interesting that, yeah, just having a nice conversation and being able to be human to human with somebody, which leads me to the next one, is the last one that I have, which is, okay, this is an important one for right now. This one is a really big deal. If you are in any kind of group that is making it, that this piggybacks off of what we just talked about, but that is making it an us versus them, where they make it that you are against the other people. So it's not that you're just superior. It's that the other people have these other crazy hidden agendas and you are fighting for the truth and you're fighting for peace, right? It's okay to have an opinion. It's okay to feel a certain way that isn't part of the group, or even if it's, you're part of this belief is on the right, or this belief is on the left, you have this thing. But to be able to be in a point where the other people are evil, that is a massive issue. And that is an easy way to get people, because it is just like you said, it is a fear-based a principle that they're doing is to make you scared of the other side, humanizing the other side as well. It's desensitizing people to hurt them before they get us. And it's a war before you know it. And then you're wrapped up fighting for something that you don't even know why you're fighting for it. You don't even understand why there are so many people. I saw a tweet the other day of this guy who is named Baked Alaska. Have you heard of Baked Alaska? Okay. He was a huge Trump supporter. He went and stormed the Capitol and he was an insurrectionist, and he's had to go to jail for that, right? Because there were many, many people who were convicted of a crime because they were doing horrible things in there and they were intending to hurt some people that weren't going to do their way. Anyway, he put this tweet the other day because he has absolutely seen the light and changed and understood now what has happened. And he put this picture of Donald Trump, who is presently selling, NFTs, and like the pictures of, he's raising money to sell these like NFTs, these pictures of himself. And so he puts this picture of the NFT and he writes on the top, like of his tweet, he says, "I went to jail for this NFT salesman." So he's, I was convicted and I was prosecuted for this. Like, this is what I'm doing. So it's,
So he's
again, it's
waking
an
up.
extreme. He woke up. He did wake
Wow.
up in prison, and I guess through his lawyers as well, but he realizes how radicalized he was. What are you being told about the other group? Do you know any people in the other group? If you are in a small town and you are a very conservative town and you don't know what goes on in the cities, you don't know the people who are in the cities, please don't have opinions on that about what is happening with this entire group of people, because people are not all the same. You cannot say that if somebody has this kind of belief because they're maybe progressive, that now they're evil and they're taking over everything and we have to fight this war against them. Consider what you do know. What information do you have with your eyes, with your mouth? Who did you converse with? Who did you speak with that had this kind of opinion? And don't use that on Twitter and be, and have the fight on there. Don't go on there. But it is something that needs to be addressed because there is the us versus them. And that is a huge tactic that's been used in political cults and conspiracy cults. And
And I'm just totally allergic to any labels, identities, or groups at the moment. So it's like, if I vote this way, it doesn't make me a this type of person. It's like, again,
no,
is it an action, a behavior, or is it a quality of your very being? Is a very different thing. And you can even
exactly.
look at it like, my parents always had this thing with rich people. You know, it's like,
Yes.
we're
Yes.
we're not rich. So it's an identity that
Yes.
rich people were inherently bad because they must be doing something wrong or bad. That's why they're rich. And so we had to identify as not that because we wanted to be good.
Yes. I would invite everybody to think about what you just said and what part of your life did you make judgments about something? What is your, us versus them? We all have them.
Big red flag.
Big red flag. Okay. Your mind is dirty.